And you're like, oh my God, how amazing. I didn't think of that. Would you say that to me? And I'm like, no. Okay, so why are you saying it to yourself? Well, I mean, I've written letters to myself where...
Okay, we're good to go. So welcome to Pharmacist Diaries, Charlotte, and thanks for making the time for me tonight, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's really great to be invited to talk with you.
Yeah, definitely. We usually kind of kickstart the episode by asking you why you decided to become a pharmacist in the first place.
Okay, so I guess at school, my science teachers were amazing, and I feel the way that you're taught really influences the passions that you have in life. So I really enjoyed science, and I also really enjoyed business. And for a long period of time, I decided I wanted to be a doctor. My granddad trained to be a doctor, but long story short, didn't end up taking his exams. So I think part of me had that drive to finish it for him. But when push came to shove, I realised it wasn't really for me. And pharmacy just seemed like the perfect balance of business and science and interacting with people and helping people. So that's kind of what drove me to do that. Because
Nice.
I kind of mixed my passions all together into one profession.
Yeah, true. I mean, there are so many aspects of pharmacy that I personally really, really enjoy, but the fact that you help people on a daily basis, and I feel that every single day, makes it worth it. And I didn't know that I would feel this way, and I didn't expect it to be this rewarding. And as a junior pharmacist, I think you've got so much to learn when you're a new pharmacist in terms of skills, you know, your communication skills, problem solving, looking at developing your leadership skills like clinical screening of prescriptions. You know, you learn to deal with patients and doctors, nurses, that you're kind of in a rat race of just constantly educating yourself and growing as a person. So you feel rewarded. But now I think with kind of 10 years of experience, it's a completely different experience for me, because those skills that I've developed are now natural to my kind of day-to-day work. And every interaction I have with a patient now feels like I've made quite a big difference. And especially now in pediatrics, and as a parent, it feels very different to what I was doing as a band 6 pharmacist, running around a hospital, screening hundreds of prescriptions and items a day, and, you know, drug histories and meds recs, TTOs, dispensary slots, night shifts. It was just never ending. So, yeah, I think as you kind of develop into the role, that reward will improve on a day-to-day basis. And it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely starting to feel that pressure that you're talking about as I think we're called trainee pharmacists now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Because I'm doing my training at Boots, which is really great, and everyone in my store is amazing, and it's a really good experience. But we basically have this portal where we have a load of work, and it is just like pharmacy operations, and there's loads of tasks to complete, and it's understanding how to run the pharmacy, and it does just feel very overwhelming, and there's loads of things that you need to complete and need to know. So as you said, that interaction with the patients that feels so rewarding, it kind of, it's not the highlight of everything because there's that much going on and that much that you're learning. You're constantly, you know, on your feet, your head's constantly working, super fast pace. But the interactions I've had with patients that's been the highlight of my pre-reg experience so far, just being able to feel like you're making a difference. And when people really show that they've appreciated the time you've spent with them or the explanations you've given them. And even there's been times when I definitely haven't known what their answer could possibly be. And I've been quite honest with that quite a lot. So I'll say to the patient that I'm just a pre-reg. I've been here for, 2.5 months. I don't fully know everything yet, but give me a few minutes. I'll go speak to the pharmacist and I'll do a bit of research, and then I'll get back to you with the best answer I possibly can. And I think that open and honesty with the patients as well is really important. And that's allowed me to build quite a good rapport with quite a lot of the patients, because they can relate to the open and honesty. If you're honest, then if you make a slight mistake with something you tell them, they're aware that you're still learning. And I think everyone's still learning on a daily basis, no matter what your age or, where you'll come from or what you're doing. No matter how much of an expert you are, there's always something to learn. So
Yeah, definitely. And I suspect actually now working in a community pharmacy after the kind of worst of the pandemic, that patients really appreciate what's offered on the high street, because access to GP services have changed quite significantly. And having to now face virtual or, internet-based consultations with a GP doesn't feel the same, and people still want that face-to-face interaction and to get support, whether it's just a bit of advice over the counter or whether it's something more serious where they need to be referred to an A&E or, to get some help from an urgent care centre, that the pharmacists end up being the first point of call, which is quite exciting, and highlights the importance of our job.
yeah, I found that a lot. I found so many people have come in and just being like, oh, well, it'll take me weeks to get through to my doctor, so I don't really want to do that. So how can you help me? Like, help me in any way you possibly can, because the last thing I want to do is go to the doctor. And it's so nice, because I remember when I was starting my pharmacy journey, I suppose you'd call it. So it was first year, and my nan didn't really understand what a pharmacist did. And my mom didn't really understand how much knowledge a pharmacist has, like how much we actually have to learn in comparison to someone who's doing medicine. Like, it's on par. We know more than doctors about medications the majority of the time, unless maybe they're a specialist and they really, really, have delved deep. Um, but it's just that contact with patients and them finally seeing that, we can do so much more for them than maybe they previously thought we could. And I think, the pandemic as well has definitely influenced the way that people think about their health. So people are, thinking, oh, how can I be healthier? People are like coming in asking about vitamins to prevent illnesses, oh, what can I do? I've got this little bit of an ailment. So they're kind of catching things a little bit earlier than maybe they would have done before. Obviously, there's a massive backlog with the NHS with services and stuff, which is devastating. But it's nice that patients feel they can come to us for advice as their first port of call. And in that respect, I really feel that pharmacy will probably change things, in my head, in a few years, well, in maybe 5 to 10 years time, hospitals will be like a tertiary, GPs will be so it'll be hospitals with a last port of call, then it's GPs, and then you'll come to pharmacies for your basic general care. So we'll kind of be doing what GPs were doing, and then GPs will kind of specialize, and it's more when you feel like you need to refer. And I just think that the health of the UK will massively improve through that.
Yeah, definitely. And it's amazing to hear that insight in community pharmacy, that people are kind of picking up minor ailments or looking at lifestyle medicine and how they can improve their health, even by taking something as simple as multivitamins to support their nutritional needs and to prevent infection and boost their immune system, in comparison to what life was like prior to COVID, where we would only kind of pop into the pharmacy if we needed to. So that's interesting. That's really interesting. And there are courses actually for staff who are on over the counter for taking vitamins and nutritional supplements. So that would be really useful as a community pharmacist to kind of get involved with that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that myself, but it's definitely something, it's quite a tricky thing to try and navigate your way around as well, because there's not all that much, at uni, there's not a section on vitamins and, general well-being to begin with. So I feel like maybe that's something that's missing from the course.
Yeah.
So because I feel like when you are a pharmacist and people come up and they ask about certain vitamins and minerals and, oh, can I take this with this medication? And I have this illness, can I take this? And trying to find resources to give them a proper answer is also really difficult.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah, and it's true. You're right that the information is slightly limited, but hopefully that will improve with time. And I mean, lifestyle prevention, lifestyle medicine is definitely becoming a much bigger topic. And you're right, we should be incorporating that to a much larger extent into the pharmacy courses. Now, of course, it does come up in conversation, and you are expected in patient consultations, for example, to provide, like in an OSCE, you would get points for providing lifestyle advice.
Mm-hmm.
But lifestyle advice is limited to you need to be exercising and moving.
Yeah.
You need to be eating healthier food and staying away from, you know, junk food and sugars and, you know, takeaways and things like that, reducing your consumption of alcohol and obviously reducing and stopping smoking. I mean, those are the main basic kind of factors that we look at, but there is so much more.
So much more.
And there's so much more that we could be doing on a high street to prevent people from having to visit the GP in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, prevention's better than cure, right? So it's all well and good at the end of an NMS, for example, giving them lifestyle advice, but they're already now having to take the medication. They're already having to deal with the illness. And while it's great at that point, it would have been even better before.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, I think things are moving in that direction, which will be amazing. And deprescribing clinics are going on to a much larger extent than they used to. And pharmacists are obviously doing, you know, medication reviews for patients who are taking multiple medications and trying to stop things, which is great. But then I think we need to take it one step further. Like looking at patients with type 2 diabetes, for example, there's so much lifestyle impact, and reducing the burden of medications and cutting down on the dosages would be amazing, and eventually stopping medication if you can reverse it. But again, like there's a lot of progress to be made, but it's nothing that we can't do.
Yeah.
And we can't achieve.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm taking us off topic here. Well, I'm glad you've been enjoying your training year. It is slightly different to the previous kind of pre-reg years, and even your professional standards that you have to gain your evidence for have slightly changed. I guess you wouldn't be able to compare because you obviously didn't know what it was like before, but that does make a slight difference to some people taking the training year. And what was your experience like with Oriel, actually? It's good to ask.
So I didn't actually do Oriel.
Okay.
Last summer, so during COVID, I managed to gain a placement for 8 weeks at Boots near home. So I worked there for 8 weeks on the healthcare counter, which was really, really great. And I really recommend people to do a placement if you're studying pharmacy at the moment. It's definitely a really good thing to do to get into community and just get a feel for it. And so essentially they offered me a pre-reg position straight from that store. I really gelled with everyone there. I had a really great time. So I got offered my pre-reg straight from that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Lucky.
Very lucky.
Yeah, because I find that quite a lot of students get quite nervous about the Oriel assessment, and it is quite tough because at the end of the day, it guides where you're going to be working, and it's if you're not amazing at taking tests under pressure, I'm one of those people. But you have the skills, and you know that you would be good at the job, and you're quite confident that you should be awarded a place according to all of the other kind of skills and grades and coursework and everything else, your communication skills, etc., and all your work experience. It kind of adds up. But some of the students find the Oriel assessment quite hard.
Yeah, I do find that's really hard though at the moment. for example, a lot of my friends trying to get jobs, I feel like it's similar because you have this automated response to a test that you've done, and it's really hard to get your foot in the door and to show your face, and having a conversation with someone is so much more powerful, in my opinion, than these aptitude tests. Um, because someone might be really super bright and be suited for a different role because they don't necessarily have the same communication skills. And it's you need to look quite a lot more holistically um, to decide whether or not someone's suitable for a role. And I don't think necessarily the tests are a good way to do that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And the other thing that's frustrating for pharmacists like me who enjoy education and training is that you have pharmacy students come on placements or internships over the summer, or they may have actually worked as a pharmacy assistant for every summer that they've been in university, and then they make a mistake on the oral test and they don't get placed with that hospital, for example, but you know them really, really well, and you know that they're going to do a great job in that training year, and you know they're going to be an amazing fit for your pharmacy department, but you can't hire them.
Yeah.
So that is something that doesn't sit quite right with me. But it is what it is, and we kind of need to deal with it. And students, I guess, need to be better prepared for it. And maybe it's something that we should implement into the MPharm course from first year and second year onwards to get people prepared to do the best that they can in those types of assessments and put them into those situations on a kind of regular basis so that they're not nervous for those type of tests. And maybe that will change their perspective and help them to kind of do a better job, really.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, confidence is key, isn't it? And so if you've not done something like that before, just a slight throw off, a bit of stress, and it can really affect you.
Yeah, definitely. It could be, slight illness or a personal situation going on in the background is guiding where you're going to go for your training year. And sometimes where you go for your training year guides the type of pharmacist that you're actually going to turn out to be.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I did my pre-reg in a hospital, but it was really a small hospital in Cambridge. It's called Papworth, and was just two of us as pre-reggers, so we got a lot of attention. We got to work with very specialist pharmacists every single day,
Amazing.
and the training that we received was amazing. And I was really fortunate to kind of be part of that small general hospital versus then going into a residency and going into a massive teaching hospital. Because now I work at Guy's and St Thomas's, we have 20 plus pre-reggers, and it's just, yeah, like it's enjoyable for them. They make lifelong friendships and they really enjoy the experience of being in a massive teaching hospital. But sometimes I think it depends on your personality where you're going to thrive. And I think that one-to-one kind of smaller environment where it was more family oriented suited me at that time.
Yeah.
It built my confidence to then say, yeah, you know what? I'm ready for residency. I'm ready to apply to a step program. And I've got the skills, I've got the confidence, and I can do it. But from university, I don't think I had that confidence straight up.
Yeah. I feel it definitely does depend on the person. And I agree with you. I think having that one on one interaction where you feel like you can really almost depend on your tutor and you feel like you can really benefit each other in a way is really important. And obviously, in a bigger hospital, I suppose it's kind of still like uni, right? So you go have lectures with all the other pre-reggers, and then you're thrown onto the ward. So I guess it's kind of just that same sort of system that you'd get given.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um, and for you, I mean, you're obviously did your kind of placement with Boots and you're doing your training year at Boots, but what were your thoughts during university about where you wanted to kind of navigate your career? Like, did you want to become a community pharmacist from your university years?
No, not at all, to be honest. Well, my closest friends will know this, but second, third year, I was like, no, I don't want to do pharmacy anymore. In my head, I was like, I'm going to try and worm my way to get an exit degree. I'm going to leave with my BSc and I'm going to go into like a sales role. I wasn't going to finish my master's in my head. I was just kind of done with it all. And I think part of that part of my mental health had a play in that. I just worn myself into the ground. And to begin with, I was like, yeah, maybe pharmacy's for me. Then as I got on, I was like, no, I want to go into pharma sales and work for a big industry, pharmacy. And then the pandemic hit and I was like, okay, well, I'm still going along with emotions. I hadn't properly made up my mind. So I completed the masters and I was like, I'll take the pre-reg at Boots and I've got something, because obviously there was so much uncertainty with the pandemic. You didn't really know what was going on. And then in my head, I was like, okay, I'll do my pre-reg year, but I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not really interested in being a pharmacist. Community to me, people over the years had fed things that community was quite, boring, quite dry. You're just there checking, printing out stickers and sticking them on boxes kind of vibe. And I just wasn't sure it was going to be for me. In my head, I think I had a bit of a block towards it. But I was like, okay, well, we'll try the pre-reg. If it doesn't work and I'm not feeling it, and if I really don't like it, I just stop. I just leave and I'll go find something else, because there's so many options in life that there's always something else you can do. I'm in my head, I was like, oh, I should be getting on with my career, but I'm only young still, so the options are there. And then as I've started to really get into my training year, it's definitely growing on me. It's the patient interaction, it's the dealing with people's medications. You're using the science and the business that I was talking about earlier. And Boots, their training is overwhelming and there's a lot to do and there's loads of tick box exercise that you need to do. But you're also looking at the way that the pharmacy acts and reacts to things. So looking at ways to improve how we deal with customers, how we provide our services, ways we can increase our productivity. And then you also get to interact with patients and deal with their queries and make them feel good about themselves and make them feel better. And I think part of that is a Boots thing. They're all about going the extra mile and making patients feel good about themselves. But also that's a fundamental thing that a pharmacist should be doing. You should be wanting to help patients. You should be helping patients and just help. Well, it's more helping them decide what they want to do. So kind of giving them guidance and then them being like, yeah, I'm happy to do that. Like, yeah, I want to do that. I've had a few interactions where patients have kind of left and they're like, yeah, so I'm going to do that. And that's so heartwarming for me that you've kind of given them that confidence to be like, yeah, I can do that. And yeah, I am happy to do that with my medications, or I am going to go seek that help. So for me, I didn't want to be a community pharmacist. In my head, was absolutely categorically not going to finish my pharmacy degree. And then suddenly it's taken a U-turn where I'm like, I don't really know what I'm going to do with my career. I don't really know what I want to do in the future, but I'm really happy with how my pre-reg is going. So I'm just going to kind of go with the flow and see where it goes.
That's incredible, because for someone to feel like they didn't even want to finish their degree, to go into a job and you're only 2-3 months into your training year, to feel like you've really understood what we do and what our role really truly involves, and what impact we can make to our patients on a day-to-day basis. So clearly, whatever pharmacy you're working in is a great place to be.
Yeah.
We should boost that pharmacy and be, be proud that you're with a good team who are obviously training you and making you feel good and empowering you to feel happy about the profession that you've chosen. So that in itself is definitely something to feel really grateful for.
Yeah.
And now I guess you can appreciate all your hard work being put into action, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice,
So,
all the hard work. And then I am such a head down, get on with the work kind of person, very conscientious. So it's nice to finally feel like I'm using what I've learned and all of the time that I've spent. And, other pharmacy students will relate the tears that you've shed and the nights you haven't slept properly, that, you're finally doing something good with it. So,
yeah, definitely. And what do you think truly was your, I guess, reason for not wanting to finish the course? Or what was it about pharmacy that you felt like you couldn't see it through at that time?
I just felt like I was going to be bored, quite honestly, and that, I wasn't really going to enjoy the patient interactions as much as I am, and that, I was just going to be bogged down with thinking about side effects of medication and checking things. And my parents have both been in sales. So in my head, I was like, right, I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to be a salesperson. In my head, like, I think that's, seeing your parents grow up that way. And I absolutely love travel. And so I think I was also worried that pharmacy was going to keep me stuck in one place a little bit. And I think the idea of being a pharmaceutical sales rep just seemed quite glamorous to me at the time, being able to travel a lot and promote medication. So it had that side to it. And I think I've also realized that community pharmacy does have more of a sales side to it.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's definitely helped me to, steer more towards not fully knowing what to do and where my career is going to take me. And I remember you gave us a talk over, I think it was Zoom or Teams at uni,
Yeah.
and you were talking about when you were an F1 pharmacist. And I remember one of my best friends, Shreya, sending me a WhatsApp during the talk, and she was like, "Oh my God, you're listening properly, aren't you?" She was like, "This, and she was like, "So what are you thinking now?" And I was like, "I know, like that would be a cool job." So I feel like that also really like sparked me to just, think that there's a lot more opportunities in pharmacy than you're portrayed to begin with. And that's also another thing that's great about your podcast, because that's what it portrays, that pharmacy is so diverse and it's not just this one, oh, you're going to be stood behind a counter checking boxes. Like there's so much more to it than that. So
It's interesting to get that feedback, because I guess when you're a student, you kind of, like you say, you kind of immerse yourself into that environment and you're constantly just figuring out how to learn and get the grades, get the coursework done, stay up late to study, and there's a lot going on, and getting used to that can take quite a while.
yeah,
You've also got the fact, like you said, that, going to university at King's College London, students tend to commute. They don't all live in central London, so it's not the same kind of university life as you have elsewhere.
yeah,
And for a lot of the students, they are commuting and living with parents and living at home, so that adds on the kind of extra stress and time as well that you spend in a train or a bus, trying to get to university. And that time you could be spending studying or immersing yourself or in listening to podcasts or going to do work experience or spending your weekends, in a community pharmacy getting paid to be a pharmacy assistant. And for some people, they get so immersed in that environment that they don't see outside of that box of just, these are my objectives. These are the things that I need to achieve in the short term to get through this year. And then you have the summer break and you enjoy yourself and you're like, oh, freedom. I can actually rest my brain for a while. You go on your holidays, you spend time with family, you do what you want to do for fun, which is really good.
Yeah.
But then you have to then go back into that regimental study mode all over again.
A long shot.
Yeah. And for some people, they find it easy to do a bit of both. But for others, and I was quite similar, is that I truly immerse myself in that environment and I just go all out with the studying, and it's just all about pharmacy. And with my residency, it was all about the residency. Everything, my whole life turned into just working days, nights, diplomas, studying. And it was just a regimental routine, but it worked really well for me and I thrived in that environment. But then I don't necessarily enjoy other experiences because I'm that focused in that one thing. And that maybe could be something for you to reflect on. I guess that in the moment you have to try and find ways to sit back, and whether it's writing in a diary or having a reflective practice or having that quiet time to allow your brain to think, yes, this is challenging, but what can I do to kind of fix it? And why was I passionate about pharmacy in the first place? And now how come I suddenly don't really enjoy it? And why am I looking for a way out? But in that moment, you're so adamant and you're confident with your thoughts that, no, I don't want to do it, that you don't see past it. I don't know. What did you think at the time?
I think it's just perspective. I don't think I really realised what community pharmacy was all about until I started the job, to be honest. And in my head, I really wanted to do pharma sales. So for me, that was where I was headed. That was what I wanted to do. And I think maybe I closed myself off to prospects of other things through that.
Yeah.
But I also think that reflecting and the pandemic slowing things down a lot gave you time to, it made me think, I am still young. I can try different things, and there's so many different careers that I don't need to constantly race through life. The days are as long as you think that they are. So an hour, if you think an hour is going to be really short, it probably will be short. But if you think, if you get home, for example, at 7:00 and you're like, oh my God, it's really late, then things will seem late. But if you get home at 7:00 and you're like, oh, it's only 7:00, I still have, a couple hours. That perspective just can change things dramatically. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a shift in mindset, really, isn't it? Yeah. And understanding where you might be thinking slightly negatively and then spinning it into a positive way.
Yeah.
Which can be quite hard in the moment. But I've found personally, I've been doing lots of kind of reflective diaries. I've found ways to answer kind of the same set questions on a daily basis, and I've been doing it. So I travel to work 4 days a week. So as soon as I sit on the train, I open that notebook, and it's now built into my routine where I don't ever get on the train without doing that. So it's a new habit that I formed. And Wednesdays I work from home for KCL, and I tend to sit on my desk and open that diary. But I guess my goal is to do it that 4 times a week, and anything more than that is a bonus. So I don't feel guilty that I'm not doing it 7 days. But when I look at that diary and I start answering the questions, I guess some of the questions relate to what kind of goals I want to achieve for that day. Like, what are the absolute 3 must things I have to do?
Mm-hmm.
One of which is always drinking 2 liters of water, because I'm really bad and don't. And I'm like, have to write it down and I have to visualize it and I have to tick it off as something that I need to achieve for the day. And that's not a work related goal, but it is for me to survive. It is for me to have energy. It is for me to have that kind of mental power to get through the day and look after myself as well. And that's really valuable. And then obviously I have, a work related goal or maybe a home related goal, and they're really simple. I try to make them really easy. But some of the other questions are kind of asking myself, well, what do you think could possibly go wrong today? But and you write it down.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, a lot of the time I write down, like, train delays will really upset me, because if my train's late, I'll miss seeing Liliana. And then I ask myself the question that, okay, if the train is delayed, how are you going to manage that situation, and preempt what you're going to do in that situation, or how you're going to deal with it mentally and emotionally, so that you don't get frustrated or upset or angry that things haven't worked out the way that you want. And there's other questions about, you know, what, who can you send like a message or a note or a gift of appreciation to? So every day I kind of make sure that I think about somebody else except myself, and kind of look at kind of being more grateful and demonstrating gratitude, whether that's to a colleague or a friend or a pre-reg, for helping me on the ward. Thinking about that really makes an impact. It makes my day much more intentional.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking ahead very early in the morning when my brain is actually very nice and fresh. And I tend to achieve everything on that list. And I tend to have a much more positive outlook. And that's just 10 to 15 minutes of writing in a diary completely shifts my mindset. And it's absolutely amazing how much of an impact that has had on my life in the last, it's been about 4 months I've been doing it.
Yeah, things like
And
reflections really make quite a difference. So in second, it was basically the middle of second year, I started to develop anorexia nervosa. There was a lot of instability in my life. My parents were getting divorced at the time. We moved house. We were moving house. And then within the space of a week, my parents had completely got divorced. My house had been sold, and were moving out of the house, and I was still at uni. So I had the whole stress of uni, and I still don't know what I wanted to do. And did I want to do pharmacy? Did I not want to do pharmacy? And then my granddad also died that same week. So, and I had uni exams. So it was just a lot of stress all at once. And that was basically just caused me to deteriorate even more. And it was a massive struggle for me. And it took me quite a while. I remember I went to see a therapist at one point, and I basically gave her my whole, life story, and was explaining the things that I was going through. And I remember her sitting there, and she went, "Yeah, that's really bad." And she didn't offer me any more advice. She was like, "Yeah, that's really bad." And obviously I'm sat there and I'm like, yeah, it's really bad. And that kind of put me off therapy and counseling for a while. And I was like, okay, so things are bad then. In my head, I was like, so things are bad. And what I thought was going to help me didn't. And I ended up seeing a specialist, and that was my third counsellor. And she taught me so many techniques. And she honestly just completely changed my life and my outlook. It took me such a long time to gain back the weight, but the weight was much more of a symptom. It was a side effect. It was the result of the way that my mind was working, and the unhappiness that I felt, and the stress, and the not feeling good enough, and the uncertainty and the instability. And I basically had to reflect a lot on how I was feeling. If I was feeling a certain emotion, why was I feeling that? What past experiences had caused me to feel that? And was that feeling right? Was it caused by something else? Should I have that emotion towards myself, towards the situation? And so I, from that, now do a lot of reflection. And if I'm feeling a certain way, I stop myself and I'm like, okay, why are you feeling like this? Um, how do I self-soothe? So I've done a lot of self-soothing, a lot of sitting with myself through these emotions, which is incredibly uncomfortable. And I know if anyone listening has done it or is thinking about, trying to help their mental health, sometimes you have to sit through this discomfort of emotion and really read yourself. And it's so uncomfortable. Like sometimes it like physically hurts. It's a hard one to describe, but you basically just have to analyze yourself and why you're feeling a certain way, and just take a step back from that emotion and figure out whether or not you need to be feeling that, um, and just find the positives in things, so much more. And it's like now on a daily basis, I'll go for a walk, and things that I used to be like, oh, I don't want to. It's just finding that little thing in that moment that can cause you to light up a little bit inside. So it's whether like you look at the sky and it looks nice, or like there's a certain lyric in a song, or just smiling at someone else and them smiling back at you, it can have such a positive impact. And so it's been really transformative the past year of my life, the way that I see the world and see the importance of spending time with myself and on myself. um, it's just, I'm almost like a different person. I feel like through uni I'm now this third person at the end of it.
Interesting. And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Um, and obviously, that must have been really challenging to go through in the midst of trying to study, and obviously has quite a big impact, or had quite a big impact on your thoughts on career and what you wanted to do, and maybe clouded your judgment to some extent.
Yeah.
Um, reflective practice is, I think it's a game changer. I think also we should all be much more compassionate towards ourselves. And I've been talking about this quite a bit on Instagram as well, because I've discovered I'm really mean to myself.
Oh, so
I really am.
I put so much pressure on myself, and
Yeah.
I'm so judgmental of myself. And I'm always like, okay, I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not performing enough. I'm not productive enough. And you can just bog yourself down so much that you don't see the things that you're actually succeeding in, or the little things that you do in the day that are so great.
Yeah. No, definitely. And it's, I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of students, a lot of pharmacists, a lot of professionals feel the same way that we do. And to be honest, I didn't even know that I was doing it. I had no idea that I was judging myself to that extent. In fact, my husband kept reminding me and saying, "What's wrong with you? Like, why would you say that to yourself?" And he even says to me all the time, like, "Would you advise that to me if I said that to you? Would you tell me the same thing, what you're telling yourself?" And I'm like, obviously not.
Yeah.
um,
Honestly, the
and it sounds so
are the
obvious.
same, and they're like, "Would you say that to me?" And I'm like, "No." Okay, so why are you saying it to yourself? And I caught
I
myself
know.
the other day giving someone close to me some advice, and I was in a very similar position myself. And I was like, so exactly what I'm telling you, if I tell myself the opposite, I'm basically saying to you what I'm telling you is completely wrong, and I'm just being nice. When I'm not, I'm telling them the complete truth. And then it's kind of that moment where you're like, okay, so why am I saying this all to myself? You just need to think, I mean, a lot of the time it's not valid, it's not right. Um, but obviously, the way that you feel towards it, your emotions are so real. But it's just realizing that you're just being so hypercritical of yourself, and you don't need to always put that pressure on yourself. Like, it's okay to slow down, and it's okay to be happy and enjoy a few little things. Like, you don't have to be constantly be so productive and so immersed in trying to get things done in this constant rat race where you're trying to be better than, the next person. But what is better? Like, better doesn't necessarily mean productive. If you're thoroughly unhappy and you wake up in the morning feeling like crying, or you're driving home from work crying, that better? Because to me, that doesn't seem like it's worth it. And I spent a lot of time reflecting on that, um, and realizing that sometimes productivity and what you're doing in your work, it's not the most important thing. And I think there's a massive,
Yeah.
especially, I guess, the American dream kind of culture vibe. And the pandemic as well has really shown that to people, that there's more to life than going out and spending money and, being flashy and going to work and, being the big superstar. Because fundamentally what matters is the people around you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting that you've gained such insight into who you are, and I think that's obviously had quite a big impact when you are faced with a patient, because you are so much more compassionate towards yourself and you're demonstrating that compassion to someone else, and that makes you feel that's where that reward comes from, and that's where community pharmacy is a good place to be if you enjoy connecting with other people like I do. And it seems like you've definitely found something that you can enjoy. And maybe it's not for you forever. Maybe you'll do it for a few years and enjoy it, but then you need a new challenge,
Yeah.
or you want to learn a new skill. And personally, you know that I've worked in lots of different areas, and I've enjoyed all the different experiences. Starting off in hospital, going to do emergency services and being part of the Formula One team, then going to work for another American hospital in Abu Dhabi and experiencing something like a brand new hospital opening and setting up all those services and getting clinics up and running. Obviously, working in another culture with another language, it was very, very different. And then becoming a parent obviously changed my life and turned things around. And then coming home and thinking, oh, what am I going to do now? Went into education and training as a pre-reg director, and then found my passion for pediatrics, which is where I'm at now. And it is doable. It is completely doable. You don't have to be a superstar pharmacist to do what I've done. You just need to have dedication. You need to have a bit of passion and enthusiasm, and you just need to love learning and trying things new. And from your initial conversation about, I guess, what Boots has taught you in the last few months, it seems like you've got some interest in service improvement and the kind of business aspect of working in a community pharmacy. So this is something that potentially you could definitely explore and get involved with as you develop, in the start of your career, and actually find out, well, actually, yeah, do I like this? Let's spend a year trying it out and seeing how much I enjoy it, gain some new skills. And if I don't like it, I'll move on,
Yeah.
because pharmacy is that good that you can try something for 1 or 2 years. And if you don't like it, or you feel like, yeah, I've tried it, but now I want to do something else, you can.
Yeah.
Like, you totally can. And the variety that we have in our jobs, and even in my job, I have so much variety, even now in one role. I'm doing education for KCL. I'm a pediatric pharmacist in palliative care. I'm managing formulary. I'm on the wards. I'm training pre-regs. Like, there's endless amounts of variety in the job. So you can never get bored. Um, so it's good that you've kind of discovered that early on in your training year, and maybe that's changed your perception of what pharmacy has to offer.
Yeah, I think having gone what I've gone through, I am a massive one for development and change and trying to make things and life better. Um, and I think, trying to change the way pharmacy works, maybe it'll allow more time for mental health. Obviously, there's not that much known about mental health in general and drugs for the brain. I remember we had a module at uni. It's hard to the brain. It's not well understood, right? So thinking about mental health and how it works is really challenging. And I think pharmacy needs a direction where you can help with people's, mental health a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
And your front line, you're going to have people walking into your pharmacy saying, I feel really bad and I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to find services to support me. Help me.
yeah, it's like signposting people to different services isn't it's not really done enough in my opinion. At uni they say signpost, but do you really know what you're signposting to and why you're doing it? And obviously pharmacy has the medications that you're taking. People's mental health has such a massive impact on how they feel towards things,
Yeah.
and how they respond to medication. And no one's mental health is completely stable. Like one day you'll feel amazing. I know I do. One day I'll feel great and I'm like, yeah, like I can do all of this stuff. And then the next day I feel like I'm lying flat on the ground and I'm like, no, not today. And everyone goes through that. And I feel like, you know, people can sometimes feel a bit weird for doing that. You feel like it's not normal, but it's so normal. And I feel like that's what should be normalized rather than people,
Exactly.
feeling low and feeling like, oh, I'm obscure, or someone having depression and feeling like they have no one they can talk to. There's so many people that go through the same things, and self love isn't taught enough. Like understanding yourself isn't taught enough. You know, prioritizing your energies into different things isn't taught to you. And, as a baby, I was thinking the other day, as a baby, if you're crying, someone else comes and soothes you, right? Because you need to, you're a baby. But then you're not taught as you get older, when you're becoming more and more independent. No one ever teaches you how to self soothe. If you're feeling a certain way, no one turns around and is like, oh, like, you know, maybe you should do this, or maybe take yourself on a walk, or spend some time with yourself. And, you are so much more independent as you get older. And I feel like going to uni as well, it's that shock to the system that, you're on your own in the big wide world. And London definitely has that impact, because despite it being a large city and there's people everywhere, it can be very lonely and very isolating at times, because as I said earlier, everyone's in the rat race. Everyone's going to get something done. I felt sometimes I was in a rush and feeling busy to go to somewhere when I was doing nothing. Like I didn't really have anywhere to properly be, but I was constantly in a rush to do nothing. And I feel like it's not taught the tactics of how to sit with yourself and be kind to yourself, and how to self-soothe and deal with your emotions. Like it no one ever really discusses that. And if you feel low, it's that, the old fashioned, okay, pick yourself up and get on with it. But that's just pushing things to the background. And sometimes, it's like a pot that's just building up and building up, and eventually it's gonna overflow. And I just feel like as a pharmacist, being there on the front line, you can intervene. You can try and give people different pieces of advice to begin with, so that things feel a lot more manageable.
Yeah, definitely. It's very mature the way that you think. And I don't know many trainee pharmacists who've got this much insight into themselves. And it's obviously taken a lot of work. And it's, yeah, and you probably feel like you've still got a long way to go. And every day, like you said, is going to be different. And there are going to be days where you wake up and you just don't know why, but you don't feel good.
Yeah.
And you're right. That's normal for everyone, including me.
Yeah.
Like everyone feels that way. And part of it, like you said, is normalizing that in society. And we don't do that enough.
No.
And we make people feel like they are like that they are depressed, or there has to be a diagnosis associated with that. You know, you've got to be categorized, when actually I feel like it's a normal part of life.
Yeah, obviously there is like clinical depression and stuff, but people aren't taught on how to support other people through that, and understanding that, you know, people are like, oh, why are you so down? You have no reason to be down. Okay, but you can be down without having a reason, you know, that kind of way that people will respond and retaliate to it sometimes is like, okay, but you've had a day when you felt down and you probably don't really know why. You know, I remember someone once turning around to me, and I felt really low, and they were like, yeah, but what do you have to feel low about? But it's not, you know, sometimes there isn't a reason. So it's also, I think, creating that understanding that, okay, like someone else is going to feel low, you've had it before, and just finding that little way to like make someone smile, or learning a way to make yourself smile in that moment is really important.
Sometimes you just need someone to listen to you too, and not actually have any judgment, and just appreciate how you actually feel, rather than either trying to tell you that how you feel is wrong.
Invalidating the worst thing anyone.
Yeah. And then on top of that, maybe potentially trying to tell you to just snap out of it and move on, because this is just life. It's not very compassionate, for sure. But people just don't know how to react. That's another problem.
Yeah.
Is they don't know what to say or how to help you. When really all you want to do is just to let your feelings out to someone else.
Yeah.
A friend, or someone that you're a student with at that moment.
I remember in my eating disorder, I was sat there, and there's also a massive thing about people with eating disorders when people are like, okay, but you know, you've got anorexia, so you don't like food, you don't want to eat, which is so completely wrong. Like, there'd be times when I'd turn around to someone and just be like, I'm just so hungry, I want to eat. I remember people would turn around and be like, okay, if you're hungry though, just eat. And you're like, oh my God, how amazing. I didn't think of that. Oh my God, why did I not think to just eat? It's not that simple. You know, like things just aren't that simple. Like fundamentally, yeah, okay, that's like a simple thing, right? But that's not helpful. It's, you know that should just eat, but you can't. And it's because there's other things going on in your head. There's, underlying things that are triggering that reaction. And it's, people, when they think that, oh, it's just a simple fix, like, oh, just, just be happy. A lot of the time people are like, yeah, you don't think I've tried that? Like, obviously, mental health isn't that simple. And I think it's developing. Some people are so lucky and they don't have issues with their mental health. They'll feel a bit low, they'll feel a bit of a lull. But, it's not taking that for granted as well for some people. I think it's really important.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've talked a bit about using your reflective practice, and you've talked a bit about sitting with yourself and finding time to spending time with you, being alone, and actually having those thoughts, I guess, accepting those thoughts and thinking about them rather than avoiding them, and challenging them in those moments where you don't want to. So those are awful, and it's hard. But it's part of the process of helping yourself in terms of recovery.
It is, yeah.
What other practices did you use apart from that?
Well, I mean, I've written letters to myself where
Okay.
it was one particular homework, as it was called. I had to write a letter to myself, basically about the way that I felt about myself. And then I had to read it and then imagine that it was someone else and write a letter back. Which was very hard because obviously you're writing down some of the darker emotions about yourself. And then just saying that as though you were your own friend. Would you ever, as we were saying earlier, would you ever say that to someone else? So I did that. I had to, retrace back my emotions and certain things in my life that might have caused me to feel a certain way. And realizing that my response to some of my emotions were not correct, they were misplaced. And I guess I just spent a lot of time, as uncomfortable as it was, just doing little things that found happiness for myself. And it didn't really matter what other people were doing or whether other people were with me. It was just, like I'd take myself to a coffee shop and read a book. Or I'd walk around the Tate Modern, which is one of my favorite places, just on my own, spending a lot of time finding things that would make me happy and figuring out whether things that I was doing and things that were making me tired and things I was expending my energy on, whether they were making me happy and whether I needed to do it and they were causing someone else, more happiness than, I mean, obviously there's tasks that you've got to do that aren't particularly fun, but it's weighing whether or not you're spending so much energy that it's just draining you. So I spent a lot of work doing that. And it's not the most uncomfortable journey to go through, and reflecting on the way that you think and why you think certain ways and things that have happened to you in the past that could influence the way that you think. And, human beings tend to like to be with other people. But sometimes that's also not possible. So it's just finding ways to, distract your mind and find things that make you happy, whether or not you're with someone else or whether or not you're alone. Because I think if you find the things that cause you happiness, then when you're with other people, you can like mutually enjoy something rather than going along doing things that other people enjoy that fundamentally are quite draining you. I think that's quite difficult because you want to please other people and you want to make other people happy, but that shouldn't always come at the expense of yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you find that writing things down and visualizing your words have a massive impact? Because for me, I didn't realize until I started doing it that seeing the words versus thinking about things in my mind was a very different way of practicing reflection.
Yeah, so I write like everything down, to be honest. I love pen and paper. I don't really like typing so much, so I'll write things down by hand. I've got a reflexive book, so if I'm feeling a certain way, sometimes I'll write poems just about like in some days when they feel difficult, and I'll write down poems, and then when I read them back to myself, I'm like, wow, okay, so that's how I felt. What happened that day? Why did I feel that way? And I also remember during my counseling, I had to basically, it's like an action reaction cycle. So, like, if something happened, what would that cause me to then do? And then how would that affect my emotion? And then basically, if I left that emotion, what would that lead to? And it was basically like a spiral, right? Because I'm a massive spiraler. So latch onto a thought, and then that will trigger something, which will trigger something else, which will trigger something else, which will then cause it to all go around again. So like writing things down like that for me was really good in my recovery, because I'd spot things. I'd be like, okay, I'm doing this. Did this happen? Okay, fine. So like, let's take that out of the equation. How do I feel now? And it's just that like elimination, but I have to write these things down. And sometimes it's good to write them down and for you to look back on how you were feeling at a particular time, even if it wasn't necessarily good, because everyone has bad days, but without the bad, the good don't feel so good. So it's like looking back at that and also seeing your progress when you've been working on it is so helpful, because you just feel like you're doing yourself some good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in reflection, obviously, you're not just focusing on those negative thoughts. You're focusing a lot on altering that mindset and being more positive. And reflecting on your good days is just as important, because when you do look back on your diary, like I tried to do it weekly and then kind of a full review each month. So on a week to week basis, I kind of end the week by looking at, what 3 really good things happened this week. Like focus on that and cherish it and be grateful for it. It could be something as simple as taking Liliana swimming, because I never do school pickups except Wednesdays when I work from home for Kings. And then we go to a coffee shop together. She always gets her standard baby chino. And yeah, I get my oat chai latte. And then we go to her swimming lesson, and which is her favorite activity of the week. And we come home, we have dinner together. My husband goes to the gym, so me and Lily can have our special time together. We have our stories and kind of snuggle up in bed. And I actually lie down with her in bed and wait for her to fall asleep, just because she likes it. Those moments are the ones that I'm very grateful for. And when I write them down, it makes it even more special for me. So I do tend to write good things as well as things that I'm not happy about, or if I've woken up and I'm tired or a bit grumpy or whatever. I also write down positive things about myself, like things that make me feel good, or skills that I have that I'm like, you know what, I'm really good at communication, for example. And I might write down examples of things that I've done to demonstrate those skills on a certain day.
Yeah.
I'm very reflective about when I help other people. So if I've done education and training with a pre-reg, for example, I tend to write that down, because I feel like, okay, I've done my bit today to help someone else to learn and grow. And that makes me feel really happy.
Yeah.
And even though it might be 15 minutes of my time, all of those 15-minute moments add up. And like you said, you came to my talk, which was a virtual kind of conversation that we had. And whatever I said in those moments sparked some form of interest in you, and your friend knew it would spark interest in you. And those are the things that I think back and I'm like, this podcast is totally worth it. Everything I'm doing with this podcast is amazing and is having an impact on people. And every time I get feedback, I mean, you contacted me a long time ago, just to say you've been listening in and, happy to hear about what's happening in my life and creating content, for free. And it's great. And those are the messages that keep me going. Those are the messages that help me to create more content. So, I really appreciate you sharing everything that we talked about tonight and really going deep on your feelings and what you've been going through. And it's nice to see such a massive change in where you were, kind of 2 to 3 years ago, and what you're developing into. And I look forward to kind of hearing how your pre-reg is going and where you end up going after this. I mean, let me ask you one last question before I let you go, is that I know you've said you're not really sure what you want to do after the pre-reg year is over and kind of where your career is going to go, but what are your initial thoughts on what you think might happen?
Honestly, I don't know. I now just kind of take every day as it is. Things can change so quickly, that's just life. But I just want to, I guess my main aim is to like try and make some difference to something, anything, whatever it is. Like, my main focus at the moment is mental health and just making people see that like self-love is, important, and it's fine, and it shouldn't be thought, oh, you're like, it's weird to self-love. So I guess like promoting that and just trying to make a bit of a difference in whatever it is I do. I guess if I stick to pharmacy, it's really sorry.
That's okay.
Let me try so I guess if I stay in pharmacy, it's focusing on trying to make a difference with patients, that interaction to really make people feel good about themselves. And I guess if I go do something else, it's just trying to make a bit of a difference and change the way that people can see things, changing people's perspectives. I guess that's kind of what I want to do. And just feel like I'm contributing something to someone else, something contributing to a cause greater than myself, I guess, is what I want to do in the future.
Yeah.
That's home or abroad.
Yeah, no, but that's amazing, because what you're trying to do, and what it sounds like you're trying to do, is identify what your purpose is in the first place and really understand what it is.
Like
It's so amazing that you've got this insight. It really is. And even though you've been through a massive obstacle and obviously still going through it, and you're in recovery mode, it's clearly made a massive difference to your life, and you're really discovering who you are, which is, it's really nice to see that as another human being. Forget being pharmacist or a trainee pharmacist, having a conversation, human to human. It's really nice to see someone develop and change, and kind of change their life into a much more positive way. And now you're thinking about, well, actually, I've helped myself recover, and what can I do to support other people, and where do I fit in terms of society, and what skills have I got with this pharmacy course which can make an impact on other people's lives, which is great. And the other thing which you should be really proud of is that you live in the present moment. I asked you a question about the future and you told me, no, I live for today. Which is something I think we all need to do more often.
Yeah, I guess it's just you take time for granted, and you can overlook the little things that have happened to you in the day that have been so positive, because you're constantly thinking about the next step. And by thinking about the things that you've done in the moment can massively impact your next step, rather than thinking, how do I get to that goal? It's kind of, what have I done and what am I doing right now that's gonna change something tomorrow, whether it's little, whether it's big. Like, you don't have to constantly be doing a billion things in a day, even if it's like one little thing that has sparked some joy and sparked some interest in you. Just little interests can take you so far. So one thing might happen tomorrow and I'm like, wow, okay, that's really inspired me, now I want to go do that. And just accelerating that interest in little things that you do in a day. So
I love it. I love it. Oh, I'm so glad that you came on the podcast, and this is all last minute. Your one post on LinkedIn got me intrigued. So here we are. Your spark to help other people, help me to get in touch with you.
People as well. I hope.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it will, Charlotte. Thanks for your time tonight, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the training year. And I'm here if you ever need to chat or message or, don't know, study advice or whatever it is. I'm always around. So, keep in touch with me.
Amazing, I will. And, we can always discuss reflections and all that fun stuff.
Agreed. You know what? Now I know you do it. I'm going to start messaging you. That's it.
Absolutely. Everyone should do it.
Agreed.